Yo YouTube! This is my video for Monday the 9th of September, which was yesterday. First of all, let me give my figures for the day. So I did fill up with fuel and therefore got a new average fuel price for this week. My fuel card, got two fuel cards and one of them is 6 pence lower than the other one this week. It isn't usually, but they've just put the price down for the last 2 weeks in a row quite low, so I'm using that card instead. So my average fuel price for this week is 13.25 pence per mile. I drove 345 miles and that took me just a little bit less than 13 and a half hours. I earned £260 from 4 CX jobs and I spent £45.71 on fuel, and that meant that after taking into account of fuel costs I earned £214. It was quite an interesting day on Monday, but let me go through it step by step and I'll try and recall all the things that I found interesting at least. So I didn't have a job in the morning booked in from the previous week. I had put bids on over the weekend and on Friday, but none of them came to anything. So I was looking for work in the morning and it was really strange. So what was strange about it was I was looking from about 7 o'clock onwards and I don't recall there being any jobs coming out of Peterborough until about 11 o'clock. But there were jobs from the surrounding area, but not a lot. It was really quiet, ridiculously quiet, even for the area that I live in. Now, if you followed my channel, you'll know that I don't really look for jobs from Peterborough. I tend to look for jobs north of Peterborough, where there's less drivers, and it's closer to where I actually live. And there was, in total, that I can recall, something like 6 jobs. There was one from Kings Lynn to Leicester that kept being reposted. There was one from Corby to say, I think it might be London, which didn't interest me at all. There was a Spalding to, I forget where exactly, but something like Leeds, but it wasn't exactly Leeds. And there was a Spalding to Louth, and then later on there was a Spalding to Keighley. That first one to Leeds isn't correct, it wasn't Leeds, but it's somewhere that sort of distance, about 100 miles. So I put bids on the first 2, Spalding to Louth and Spalding to this other place, and I got the Spalding to Louth one. And it was for a medium wheelbase van. The loaded miles was 49, and I stuck on a £60 bid, which is kind of what my minimum is for a short work if I can get away with it. I was 3 miles away from the pickup, so very few dead miles, and it was 7 minutes drive for me to get to the pickup. And as it was, what I was doing was picking up a load from a employed driver who was on a round delivering sort of plumbing stuff, plumbing based stuff as far as I was aware, and his round required him to drive 2 hours to East Anglia, and then one of the stops was from Spalding going up to Louth, and then his next stop was going to Kings Lynn. And for him, it was about an hour and a quarter drive to Louth from Spalding, and for him to get up there and back to Kings Lynn was a good 2.5 hours of his day to do one stop. So for whatever reason, either he or his boss decided that they would subcontract that particular job out. So I met him when he delivered to a residential address in Spalding. He gave me his items, and I took that one up to Louth. So from my point of view, that was an ideal job. It's close to where I live, and it's a simple job. And the only downside is it ends up in an area which is quite quiet. But I got paid a reasonable amount of money for that, and it also helped that driver out because he didn't have to waste in Vancouver's a lot of driving out of his way, and it made his day a lot shorter because he lived back in Rugby, I think it was. So he, even if he'd finished with King's Lynn, it was a good probably 2.5 hours home for him. So it did give me a bit of insight into what it's like to be an employed same-day courier, and it wasn't necessarily something that would appeal to me. But that's by the by. Anyway, it was interesting to know that. I found that interaction interesting, and the fact that the company chose to subcontract out one of the jobs just to make it a little bit easier for their company. So I met this guy at 9:45, having had the call at 9:10. So I had the call way before I had to leave the house. But what that meant was I was a bit late starting because I hadn't got this job booked in previously, which had a bit of a knock-on effect for the rest of the day, but not a great one. So effectively my first pickup was 9:45. I then took the items up to Louth, and I was finished and ready for looking at another job at 11:35. And there wasn't, as I expected, there wasn't really anything around, but there was also no drivers around where I was either. So I was about 25 minutes south of Grimsby, which was a good place for me to get to work from. Or I was about an hour north of Boston. And a job came up in both those areas. A job came up in Grimsby, but that wasn't collecting for another 2 hours, so I didn't bother bidding on that. So that's Grimsby to Sheffield. I had to look at the other drivers that are around. There was 4 other drivers in Grimsby, but they were all Luton vans and maybe one extra long wheelbase. So I felt that if a small van job came up, I would probably get that job from Grimsby. But it was going to Sheffield. It was like 2 hours. It was about like 1:30, 2 o'clock pick up, and it wasn't going to fit into my day. And there was a job in Boston, but I was an hour away from it. But there were no drivers in Boston at this point at all. So I thought, what should I do? And then I looked west, and a job came up going from Lincoln to Nottingham. I hadn't really considered going west, and Lincoln was about 40 minutes away from me, so a bit more than Grimsby, a bit less than Boston. And to me, that job seemed like a pretty good bet. So I put a bid on that job, and I put a bid on, and then I started to drive towards it because I was reasonably confident that I was going to get it for 2 reasons. I was the only driver anywhere near Lincoln at this point in the day, and the job was for a long wheelbase, 47 loaded miles, and I put on my £60 bid, and I think generally that wins. Generally, I find, at least in my area. So I thought, I'm probably the only driver going to bid on this. I've put a fair bid on it. I'm probably going to get this job. So I started to drive towards Lincoln. Even if on the off chance I didn't get it, I'd be closer to somewhere. I was going to sort of drive 10 minutes, 15 minutes towards Lincoln and sort of see how the job's landscape sort of lay. And I got the job about 10 minutes later. I was given it. So the call came through at 12 o'clock, and by this point I was sort of 35 minutes away from the pickup. So and also just to let you know, I was 25 miles away from where I dropped off to where I picked up. So now, if we're adding these up, I've had 3 miles for the first one, 25 miles for the second one. That's 28 miles not paid for to do the jobs, which I think is not too bad so far. I'm happy with that. So I arrived on site at about 12:30ish, collected the item, and then made my way. So it's was a long wheelbase, wasn't it? I can't remember what I took, to be honest. Whether it was pallets or not. It was a long wheelbase job. I'm trying to think what I picked up. My memory is so bad, I've got no idea what I picked up. So it might have been a smallish item, but it wasn't. I can't remember it being particularly voluminous. Anyway, I got myself to a drop off in Nottingham at 8 minutes past 2, and I had to wait for a bit. And by the time I got offloaded, it was 2:40. So now I was looking for my third job. It was sort of the middle of the afternoon. In a good area for work, there's lots of jobs here, and I put loads of bids on, trying to stay reasonably local. So my tactic was to try and get 4 little jobs in, or 1 big job at this point. I did at this point put a bid on a job from Derby to London. That'd be my last job of the day. But the one that I got was from Castle Donington going to Leicester, and that was 12 miles away from where I was, about 20 minutes away. It was 25 loaded miles for a long wheelbase van job again. That's my third. Well, the first one was medium wheelbase, then long wheelbase, and then long wheelbase. So at this point in the day, I was thinking, I'm really glad I've got a long wheelbase van, because these are jobs I wouldn't have got otherwise. And I got my £60 for it. The call came through at 2:34 for me to go there, and I arrived at the pickup point at 5:05. It's only a short job, it's only about, I said 25 miles, so it's only about sort of half an hour journey. So I thought I'd have a pretty good fighting chance of getting a 4th job in, particularly when I was in Leicester. So I made my way to Leicester. Traffic was okay, and I arrived and was finished and offloaded at 16 minutes past 4. There was a bit of a delay getting offloaded, but otherwise that was good. And I thought, I've got 45 minutes here to get another little job that's local, and then that'll be my day done. And there wasn't a lot to bid on, and I didn't get anything. And I thought, and when I was, oh yes, I remember this one. This was not actually Leicester itself. It was actually a village about 5 miles to the west of Leicester, and it put me in a really interesting situation. Although I was in the middle of nowhere, I was close to Leicester. Obviously, I wasn't that far from Coventry. Nuneaton, Loughborough was within half an hour. Hinckley was close. These are all good places to get work from, but I couldn't get a job, and I sort of made my way a bit closer towards Leicester. Got myself close to the I think it's the M1 that runs down past Leicester. So got myself close to the M1, which is about 5 miles closer to Leicester, and I looked for jobs then, and it got to 5 o'clock and I didn't get anything, and I had to make a decision here. I was only about an hour and a quarter from home, maybe an hour and a half at this point, because I was the other side of Leicester. But I really didn't want to go home at this point, because I wanted to get that 4th job to give myself, close to my target of earnings. I worked out that if I'd gone home dead, I would have earned £150 exactly. I thought that was including the mileage to get home. So I thought I'd just get one more £60 job, because over the £200 mark for the day, I'll be happy with that. And I thought, I'm in not a bad area here. It's just, I'm even within striking distance to Derby and potentially Nottingham. So I made my way home, but not to go all the way home. I got myself around the top of Leicester, and then stopped in a lay-by, and I was looking for jobs all this time. And I waited in the lay-by for about an hour, and then I moved on a bit further towards home, and I got myself about 20 minutes from Leicester and about 25 minutes from Nottingham, and about half an hour or so from Derby. It was quite interesting spot in the country. factory. And I stopped there for a bit, and I thought I'll wait a bit longer and see if I can get a job. And I was quite happy playing my game while I was in the van. I'd taken with me the food for the day. I just got through the last bit of the food, so I wasn't overly hungry. And I was really hoping to get a fourth job, and eventually, and I'm quite proud of this, quite proud of myself for this, I did actually get a job in the end. I think I underbid on it in my kind of excitement to win the job. I think I put a bit too little on it, but I'm not going to worry about it. I'm going to learn from it for next time. And what I bid, a job came up going from Leicester, and by this point I was 20 minutes away from Leicester. I sort of moved gradually further away from Leicester and more towards Nottingham. And it was going to Luton, which isn't closer to my home, but it's not too bad. And the actual loaded miles was 68 loaded miles, again for a long wheelbase van. So today was all about long wheelbase work. The call came through at 6:38. So I'd been looking for about 2.5 hours at this point. So although I've said I worked for 13.5 hours, 2.5 of that was just sitting in my van playing my game. And I was by this point I'm gonna guesstimate about 10 miles away from the pickup. But it was 20 minutes. It wasn't a long distance. It was 20 minutes. And I put a bid on of £80 for 68 loaded miles, which I thought was what I'd be prepared to do the job for, because it would give me like a £60 job, which is what I was looking for originally, plus £20 extra to get myself from Luton to home without worrying about the diesel. So £80 to me would seem like an okay price. I got on site at 6:57, but the interesting thing was, when I received the call for the job, the guy said they were just actually getting 3 vans to go. Now obviously I didn't know this at the time that I made the bid. Now in hindsight, if I'd known that information, I'd have put a higher bid on, because the chance of me competing against the drivers that were in that area willing to do the job, so this was at this is about 6:45. The chance of me winning a job at the price I put it on at, if it was just me, is obviously quite lowish. But if it's 3 drivers trying to get the jobs, then obviously it's a much higher chance that I'm going to win any bids that I put on. There's not going to be a lot of drivers that want to do that job at that point in time. So that bit of information wasn't on the booking and wasn't available to me. And if I'd known that, I would have bid more. But obviously, as a driver, you don't know that. Anyway, I was the second driver to arrive. The first driver was like 5 minutes away from the pickup, so he was really close. And as I was waiting, the third driver arrived. So just out of interest, the first driver was in a large, long wheelbase van, like mine. I think it might have been a Mercedes or a Volkswagen. And then I got my Transit, and then there was a Luton van came up behind us as a third option. But he'd bid it on it as a long wheelbase job. We had to wait for a bit, and I did have a quick chat with the first guy when we were waiting. We were all CX drivers, so that was the first thing I established. We all did it as a long wheelbase job. I didn't ask the third guy what he charged, but I did ask the first guy, and he charged a bit more than I did. Now I looked back at the pence per mile that he got, and it's something like 147-ish, and I got something like 115, and I'd be happy with like £1.30 per mile. So I probably could have bid an extra tenner and felt it was a fair price for a fair job, but this other guy paid an extra 20 quid. So, I'm not. I wasn't. I was a bit at the time thinking, oh, you've messed up with this. But in hindsight, I got what I felt was fair for me, and I just need to perhaps learn from that and think, well, maybe value yourself slightly a bit more. So maybe in the future, at that time of night, I'll add on a bit more money. But I'm not unhappy with what I got. We had to wait for about 20 minutes, which was disappointing. At the pickup point, they weren't ready for us. But we all had 3 pallets put on our vans. And then we made our way down to Luton. I left second because I was second to arrive, and I arrived at the first, which is amazing because I did go down the motorway about 70 at times, but I didn't rush it. 60 for most of it, and I actually arrived, and I was offloaded just as the other guy arrived. So I was arrived on site at 8:40. It was dark by then. First time I've been on the site, it was quite a bit confusing where to go. The forklift driver that eventually came to me was how to describe it. Some forklift drivers, they're kind of competent and efficient, I would say, with what they do. And there are some forklift drivers that, for all I know, are competent, but they go so quickly. He was just rushing around everywhere. I think it was unreasonably fast, and he didn't speak the greatest English, but he was like speeding around everywhere. Not very many beeps, to be honest. There was the odd beep, but he came up to my van at full speed. So I think he was skilled, but I just think that there's little room for error in the way that he did it. Anyway, we passed off with no issue in the end. He signed my paperwork, and I was off site at, in the end, 5 minutes to 9. Now, I could have been home like about 5:30 that day, yesterday. Also, to bear in mind, I did get a job for this morning. So during all this, I booked in a job for early the following morning because I have got my therapy to go to on Tuesday morning and then my dialysis to go to. But I've got time to do a job, and I've got that booked in the morning. So I had sort of achieved everything I wanted to achieve that day. And in the end, even with the 2.5 hours sort of waiting for a job, my day was still only from door to door 13.5 hours. So it's not like the day wasn't extraordinarily long. It's within the ballpark of what I'm prepared to do. And in the end, I got the money I wanted to get for that day. So that last job, although it did make my day a lot longer, I'm really pleased I got it in the end. And I'm really pleased I persisted and didn't give up and got that 4th job, because that really made that day a good day in the end. And yeah, it all turned out I was happy with it. I can't do a job, looking forward now, I can't do a job on Thursday morning. I've got a hospital appointment. I mean, I might possibly be able, if it's quick, fit something in, if I'm very lucky, if it's something very local, but I'm assuming that I can't. So this is probably the only time on Tuesday mornings when I can get an extra job in. But if I can earn sort of £214 for those 3 days, that's going to be close to £700, £650, 660 for the 3 days, plus my 65 for tomorrow. That's going to be £700. So I'm not going to make target necessarily, but I'm not going to be a million miles away from it. Right, so I think that was everything that I was going to talk about for Monday. So just for full disclosure, this is Tuesday morning because it was really dark last night. I couldn't do a video in the dark, it'd be really boring. And I've just finished my job that I got booked in yesterday. I will just run through it quickly. It was a job picking up in Peterborough at 7:30 and delivering 3 stops in Sleaford, which is only about half an hour from where I live. So that was a nice little job. I got £65 for it. I probably could have got an extra £5, but glad I got it booked in. And in the end, the pickup was a bit of a ball ache. The drop-offs, ironically, were pretty easy. So it was fine. I'm finished now for the day. I'm going back home quickly, and then pop to my therapist session, and pop to dialysis. I did actually, my alarm didn't get off this morning, so I was actually 10 minutes late to the pickup. So that was a bit of a rush. I had to rush out of the house this morning. But in the end, they weren't ready for me when I arrived anyway, so it was all very well. The balls up was not my fault at the pickup point. They were so, I would say, so disorganised this morning. It's hard to criticise the people that are involved because they're just, they're given stuff to do by people who order it. But it just was unusually disorganised and chaotic. And then when I came up from Peterborough towards Sleaford, the traffic was quite busy. That was a bit worrisome, but when I arrived on the sites it was fine. The guys that I delivered to were all very professional and friendly, and that was always very good, particularly when you go to the places I was going to today. Right, that is it. So thank you very much for listening to my video. I'm going to try and find a job for Wednesday this afternoon, for tomorrow. Try and get a long day, try and get an early start and a long day in, and we'll see how it goes. So, I hope you are being successful, however you choose to find that word for yourselves, and I'll speak to you sometime Wednesday. Farewell, friends.